What happens when comedy's most brutally honest voice walks into daytime television's most politically charged arena? Well, you're about to find out, because Ricky Gervais just delivered one of the most savage takedowns in television history, and Joy Behar never saw it coming. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this is going to be absolutely wild. The tension was palpable from the moment Ricky Gervais stepped onto the View set. You could practically feel the electricity in the air as he settled into his chair, that trademark smirk already playing at the corners of his mouth. Joy Behar, sitting directly across from him, had that look in her eyes, the one that regular viewers know all too well. She was ready for battle. "So, Ricky," Joy began, her voice dripping with barely concealed disdain, "you've made quite a career out of offending people. Some might say you've built your entire brand on being deliberately controversial." Ricky leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed by what was clearly intended as an opening shot. "Well, Joy, I've made a career out of telling the truth through comedy. If that offends people, maybe they should ask themselves why the truth bothers them so much." The audience stirred uncomfortably. This wasn't going to be one of those softball celebrity interviews where everyone plays nice and promotes their latest project. You could see it in Joy's posture, the way she straightened up like a cat about to pounce. "The truth?" Joy's voice rose an octave. "Is that what you call it when you mock people's deeply held beliefs? When you make jokes about things that are sacred to millions of people?" "Sacred according to who?" Ricky shot back without missing a beat. "See, that's the problem right there, Joy. You're acting like your personal beliefs should somehow be off limits to everyone else. Comedy has always been about challenging ideas, even the ones people hold dear." Whoopi Goldberg tried to interject from the moderator's position. "Now let's keep this civil, everyone." But Joy was having none of it. Civil? He's the one who gets on stage and ridicules entire groups of people. He thinks being British gives him some kind of free pass to insult Americans. Ricky's eyes lit up with genuine amusement. "Oh, so now this is about nationality? I thought we were talking about comedy. But since you brought it up, let me ask you something, Joy. How many American comedians have made careers out of mocking British people? Should I be offended by that?" "That's completely different, and you know it," Joy snapped. "Is it, though?" Ricky's voice remained calm, which seemed to irritate Joy even more. "Or is it only different because you happen to agree with those jokes? See, that's the thing about free speech, Joy. It doesn't work if you only apply it to speech you like." The other hosts exchanged nervous glances. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, while Sunny Hostin was frantically shuffling through her notes, probably trying to find a way to change the subject. Joy's face was getting redder by the minute. "Don't lecture me about free speech, Ricky. I've been defending free speech longer than you've been telling jokes. Have you, though?" Ricky tilted his head with mock curiosity. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're trying to tell me what I can and cannot joke about. That doesn't sound like defending free speech to me." "I'm not telling you what you can joke about," Joy protested. "I'm saying there should be consequences when your jokes hurt people." "Ah, there it is," Ricky said, pointing a finger in the air like he'd just solved a puzzle. "Consequences. So what you're really saying is that speech should be free as long as people are willing to face the consequences you deem appropriate. That's not free speech, Joy. That's controlled speech with extra steps." The studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. You could practically hear a pin drop as these two titans of their respective worlds circled each other like intellectual gladiators. Joy was clearly frustrated that her usual tactics weren't working. "You're twisting my words." "Am I? Let me ask you this then, and I want you to think carefully about your answer." Ricky leaned forward, his tone becoming more serious. "Who gets to decide what's acceptable? You? The network? The government? Because throughout history, every time someone has tried to control what people can say, they've always claimed it was for the greater good." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Ricky wasn't finished. "And another thing, Joy," Ricky continued, his voice gaining momentum like a freight train, "you keep talking about consequences, but what you really mean is punishment. You want to punish people whose humor doesn't align with your worldview. That's not progressive, that's authoritarian." Joy's eyes flashed with anger. "Authoritarian? Did you just call me authoritarian? I'm trying to protect vulnerable people from hate speech disguised as comedy." "Hate speech," Ricky repeated slowly, like he was tasting the words. "See, that's a fascinating term, isn't it? Because who gets to define what constitutes hate speech? You? Because I guarantee you that somewhere out there, someone considers your political commentary to be hate speech against conservatives." The camera caught Whoopi trying to signal the producers, but this train wreck was too compelling to stop now. The ratings were probably through the roof. "That's ridiculous," Joy shot back. "There's a clear difference between political commentary and targeting marginalized groups." "Is there, though?" Ricky's eyebrows shot up. "Because last week on this very show, didn't you spend an entire segment mocking evangelical Christians? Aren't they a group of people with deeply held beliefs? Or does the protection only extend to groups you personally sympathize with?" Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She clearly hadn't expected him to come prepared with specific examples of her own behavior. That's completely different," she stammered. "Evangelical Christians have political power. They're not marginalized." "Ah, so it's a power calculation," Ricky nodded sagely. "So comedy is acceptable as long as you're punching up, not down. But here's the problem with that logic, Joy. Who decides who has power? In Hollywood, where I work, being conservative is about as marginalized as you can get. So by your own logic, shouldn't conservative comedians be allowed to mock liberal celebrities without consequence?" Sarah Haynes finally found her voice. "Maybe we should talk about your new special." No, this is fascinating." Ricky waved her off. "I want to understand Joy's moral framework here, because it sounds like she's created this elaborate system where certain groups are off limits to comedy based on her personal assessment of their social status. That's not comedy, that's political activism with punchlines." Joy was getting visibly agitated now. "You're putting words in my mouth." "Am I? Then explain it to me," Ricky challenged. "Give me the exact criteria that determines who can be joked about and who can't. I'm genuinely curious." "It's about compassion," Joy said, her voice rising. "It's about not kicking people when they're down." "Compassion," Ricky mused. "That's a lovely word. But here's what I find interesting about your version of compassion, Joy. It only seems to extend to people who share your political beliefs. Where was your compassion when you spent months calling half the country deplorable? Where was your compassion when you mocked working-class Americans for their religious beliefs?" The studio was dead silent. Even the cameramen seemed to be holding their breath. Joy's face was turning an alarming shade of red. "I never called anyone deplorable." "You're right. That was Hillary," Ricky conceded with a grin. "But you certainly agreed with the sentiment, didn't you? You spent weeks after that election explaining why those voters deserved to be mocked and dismissed." "That's not the same thing at all," Joy protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Ricky leaned back, clearly enjoying himself now. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You've created this moral hierarchy where your targets are legitimate and mine aren't. But comedy doesn't work that way, Joy. Either everything is fair game or nothing is." Sunny Hostin finally jumped in, clearly trying to rescue her colleague. "But Ricky, surely you can see the difference between joking about political figures and making fun of ordinary people's personal characteristics. Can I?" Ricky turned to her with renewed interest. "Because Joy just spent 10 minutes attacking my personal characteristics. She called me deliberately controversial. She questioned my motives. She implied I'm a bully. If I were a more sensitive person, I might feel targeted and marginalized right now." Joy scoffed. "Oh, please, you're hardly a victim here." "Exactly my point," Ricky said triumphantly. "I'm not a victim because I don't choose to be one. I understand that when you put yourself in the public eye, you become fair game for criticism and mockery. That's the price of admission. But somehow you think certain groups should be exempt from that basic rule of public discourse. Because those groups didn't choose to be marginalized," Joy shot back. "And I didn't choose to be British," Ricky countered immediately. "I didn't choose to be an atheist in a largely religious world. I didn't choose to have the sense of humor that I have. But I don't expect special protection because of those characteristics. I expect to be treated like everyone else, which means sometimes people are going to mock me, and that's perfectly fine." Whoopi made another attempt to steer the conversation. "Let's talk about the responsibility that comes with having a platform." "Oh, responsibility." Ricky's eyes lit up again. "Another fascinating concept. Tell me, Whoopi, what exactly is my responsibility as a comedian? To make Joy comfortable? To avoid topics that might upset people? Because if that's the case, then comedy is dead." Joy couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Your responsibility is to not spread hatred and division." "But who defines hatred and division?" Ricky pressed. "Because I could argue that this show spreads division every single day by presenting only one side of political issues and demonizing anyone who disagrees. Does that make you hate speakers?" The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The other hosts were looking anywhere but at the camera, clearly uncomfortable with how brutal this exchange had become. Joy was clearly struggling to regain control of the conversation. You could see the desperation in her eyes as she searched for a comeback that would land a decisive blow. "You know what your problem is, Ricky. You think being offensive makes you edgy and important. But really, you're just a middle-aged man picking on people who can't fight back." Ricky's smile widened, like a predator who had just been handed the perfect opening. "Picking on people who can't fight back? That's interesting, Joy. Because last I checked, you have a national television platform, a massive social media following, and the backing of a major network. If you can't fight back, then frankly, you shouldn't be in this business." "That's not what I meant, and you know it," Joy snapped, but there was a tremor in her voice now. "Then what did you mean?" Ricky pressed, his tone becoming more surgical. "Because it sounds like you're trying to position yourself as the victim here, which is fascinating given that you literally invited me on this show to confront me about my comedy. That doesn't sound like the behavior of someone who can't fight back." Sarah Haynes tried desperately to intervene. "I think what Joy is trying to say is—" "No, let Joy speak for herself," Ricky cut her off, never taking his eyes off his target. "I'm genuinely curious about this victim narrative she's constructing. Joy, do you consider yourself powerless in this situation?" Joy's jaw was clenched, so tight it looked painful. "I'm talking about the people your jokes hurt, not myself." "Ah, so you're speaking for other people now." Ricky nodded thoughtfully. "How noble of you. Tell me, did these people ask you to speak for them? Or did you just appoint yourself as their defender?" "Someone has to stand up for them," Joy shot back. "Do they, though?" Ricky's voice took on an almost gentle quality which somehow made his words even more devastating. "Because in my experience, the people who are actually marginalized don't need celebrities like you to protect them. They're perfectly capable of speaking for themselves. What they usually need protection from is people like you who want to use their struggles as political weapons." The studio audience gasped audibly. This wasn't just a debate anymore. This was character assassination in real time. Whoopi finally found her voice. "Now that's going too far, Ricky." "Is it though, Whoopi?" Ricky turned to her with that same eerily calm demeanor. "Because let's think about what Joy is really doing here. She's taking groups of people she's probably never actually met or spent time with, and she's using their theoretical pain to justify censoring speech she doesn't like. That's not advocacy, that's exploitation." Joy looked like she was about to explode. How dare you suggest that I don't care about marginalized people? I've spent my entire career fighting for civil rights. Have you, though? Ricky tilted his head with mock curiosity. Or have you spent your career fighting for political positions that happen to benefit you personally? Because there's a difference, Joy. A big difference. What is that supposed to mean? Joy demanded. It means that your version of fighting for civil rights seems to involve a lot of television appearances and very little actual sacrifice, Ricky explained patiently. You sit in this comfortable studio, surrounded by people who agree with you, and you lecture the country about morality. But when was the last time you actually put yourself at risk for these causes you claim to care so much about? Sunny Hostin jumped in, clearly trying to defend her colleague. Joy has been an advocate for decades. She's used her platform to raise awareness about important issues. Awareness. Ricky repeated the word like it tasted sour. There's that word again. See, that's the problem with your entire industry. You think raising awareness is the same as actually doing something. You think having the right opinions makes you a good person. Joy's voice was shaking with rage now. And what have you done? Besides mock everyone and everything? I've made people laugh, Ricky said simply. I've given people permission to think differently about things. I've challenged sacred cows and forced people to examine their own assumptions. That might not sound like much to you, but comedy has been doing that for thousands of years, long before television hosts decided they were the moral arbiters of society. Making people laugh at the expense of others isn't noble, Joy shot back. Says who? Ricky's eyebrows shot up. You? Because I hate to break it to you, Joy, but you're not exactly the authority on what's noble. You've built your career on making people laugh at politicians you don't like, at religious people you disagree with, at entire swaths of the country you consider beneath you. The only difference between us is that I'm honest about what I'm doing. The other hosts were exchanging panicked glances. This had gone way beyond what anyone had expected, and there was no sign that either combatant was ready to back down. Joy was practically vibrating with fury. I don't punch down at vulnerable people. Don't you, though? Ricky leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Because I've watched this show, Joy. I've seen you mock stay-at-home mothers, religious, believers, people in rural communities, anyone who doesn't share your coastal elite values. How is that not punching down? Those aren't vulnerable groups, Joy protested weakly. According to who? Ricky demanded. According to your little bubble of privileged entertainment industry friends? Because I've got news for you, Joy. A single mother working 2 jobs to feed her kids is a lot more vulnerable than a millionaire television host lecturing people about morality from her Manhattan penthouse. The silence that followed Ricky's last statement was deafening. Joy looked like she had been physically slapped, her mouth opening and closing without any sound coming out. The camera captured every micro-expression of shock and humiliation on her face as the weight of his words sank in. I don't live in a penthouse, Joy finally managed to stammer, which was possibly the weakest comeback in television history. Ricky's laugh was genuinely delighted. That's your response? That's what you're going with. Not a denial of the hypocrisy, not a defense of your positions, just a correction about your real estate situation. Joy, you've just proven my point better than I ever could. Whoopi was frantically gesturing to the producers now, clearly desperate to end this massacre, but Ricky wasn't finished delivering his knockout blow. You know what the real tragedy is here, Joy? Ricky's voice took on an almost philosophical tone. You actually had a chance to have a meaningful conversation about comedy, about free speech, about the role of humor in society. But instead, you chose to make it personal. You chose to attack my character, my motives, my very right to exist as a comedian. And when I called you on your hypocrisy, you folded like a house of cards. Joy's face was now a fascinating shade of purple. You're the one who made it personal by attacking my lifestyle. Your lifestyle? Ricky looked genuinely confused. Joy, I didn't attack your lifestyle. I pointed out the contradiction between your public positions and your private reality. There's a difference. Although I understand why you might not see it, given that your entire career is built on not seeing those kinds of contradictions. Sarah Haynes made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Maybe we can find some common ground here. Surely you both believe in treating people with basic respect. Do we, though? Ricky turned to her with renewed interest. Because I've been sitting here for the past 20 minutes being lectured about my character, my morality, my very right to practice my profession. And when I've responded in kind, suddenly we need to find common ground. That's fascinating. Joy found her voice again, though it was shaking with barely controlled rage. The difference is that your comedy hurts innocent people. Innocent? People, Ricky repeated slowly. And who exactly are these innocent people, Joy? Because from where I'm sitting, the only people who seem to be hurt by my comedy are professional activists and television hosts who profit from being perpetually offended. That's not true and you know it, Joy shot back, but her voice lacked conviction now. Is it not? Ricky's smile was razor-sharp. Then explain something to me, Joy. If my comedy is so harmful, if it's really hurting all these innocent people, why do millions of them choose to watch it? Why do they buy tickets to my shows? Why do they seek out my content on streaming platforms? Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. It was clear she had never considered this obvious contradiction in her narrative. I'll tell you why, Ricky continued, clearly savoring every moment. Because most people understand something that you seem to have forgotten. They understand that comedy is not real life. They understand that a joke is not a policy position. They understand that laughing at something doesn't mean you hate the people involved. But some people don't understand that, Joy managed weakly. Some people don't understand a lot of things, Joy, Ricky shrugged. Some people think the earth is flat. Some people think vaccines cause autism. Some people think this show represents quality journalism. Should we structure our entire society around protecting the feelings of people who fundamentally misunderstand how the world works? The studio audience actually gasped at that last comment. Even for this brutal exchange, that was a particularly savage blow. Whoopi finally found her voice. That was uncalled for, Ricky. Was it, though? Ricky turned to her with genuine curiosity. Or was it just an observation that made you uncomfortable? Because that's really what this whole conversation has been about, hasn't it? Joy's discomfort with ideas that challenge her worldview. Joy was visibly trembling now, whether from rage or humiliation was unclear. You're nothing but a bully hiding behind the excuse of comedy. And there it is, Ricky said triumphantly. The last refuge of someone who's lost an argument. Personal attacks. Name-calling. Joy, if I'm a bully, what does that make you? You invited me onto your show specifically to attack my character and my profession. You've spent this entire conversation trying to delegitimize my right to exist. As a comedian. If that's not bullying, I don't know what is. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Joy, who had started this conversation as the righteous defender of the marginalized, now looked like exactly what she had accused Ricky of being. A bully who couldn't handle being challenged. The difference is that I'm trying to protect people, Joy said desperately. Are you, though? Ricky's voice was almost gentle now, which made his words even more devastating. Or are you trying to protect your own sense of moral superiority? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're using other people's theoretical pain to justify your own desire to control the conversation. Joy looked like she was about to cry, which was perhaps the most shocking moment of this entire exchange. Here was a woman who had built her career on being tough, on taking no prisoners, reduced to near tears by a comedian with a British accent and a sharp tongue. I think we need to wrap this up, Whoopi said firmly, clearly trying to end Joy's suffering. Of course you do, Ricky nodded knowingly. Because heaven forbid we actually follow a difficult conversation to its logical conclusion. Much easier to cut to commercial and pretend this never happened. He stood up from his chair, straightening his jacket with deliberate casualness. "Thank you for having me on, ladies. This has been absolutely illuminating." As he walked off the set, leaving behind a stunned panel and a shell-shocked audience, you could practically hear the collective exhale of everyone involved. What had started as a routine celebrity interview had turned into something much more significant. A complete dismantling of the moral framework that underlies so much of modern media discourse. Joy sat there in stunned silence, clearly processing what had just happened to her. The woman who had thought she was going to teach Ricky Gervais a lesson about responsibility had instead received a master class in intellectual honesty and logical consistency. And there you have it, folks, one of the most brutal intellectual beatdowns in television history. What did you think of Ricky's performance? Did he go too far, or did Joy get exactly what she deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more incredible moments like this one.